Want to get back into some of the other big stories that we have been covering here over the past several days. The investigation into why a Nashville high school student fatally shot a classmate before killing himself has centered on his online writings, which authorities describe as concerning warning signs. Dozens of pages posted on social media accounts that anti-hate analysts believe belong to the gunman include racist ideologies and plans for the shooting. Solomon Henderson, a 17-year-old student at Antioch High School, shot and killed a female classmate who was 16 in the school's cafeteria on Wednesday, then turned the gun on himself. Nearly 2 years prior, a shooter opened fire at a private elementary school in Nashville, killing 6 people, including 3 children. Anti-hate analysts quickly identifying dozens of pages believed to have come from Henderson, filled with calls for violence and racist comments, including neo-Nazi and white supremacist ideologies, expressions of shame that he was black, and praise for specific people who carried out well-known shootings. A lot to discuss here, so I do want to bring in Sal Lafriri, president of PCC Secure and former NYPD. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and help discuss this just a little bit further. Obviously, a lot to discuss.
Good morning, Josh.
Good morning. Well, first off, I want to talk to you a little bit about Nashville police. They have not established a connection necessarily between the shooter and the victim, saying that it could have been random. Is something random what we would normally see in a situation? Is it just kind of up in the air? Are there questions about that?
Well, normally in situations like this, if it was a targeted shooting, you would see something in the initial investigation that would lend itself towards it. You would see, maybe an order of protection or a relationship between the 2 individuals. So those become the targeted attacks. But a lot of times what we see in these shootings is that the person goes in with the intent to kill as many people as possible. They realize that they have a short time frame, that 911 is going to be called, law enforcement is going to respond if they're not already on the scene. So they realize they have a few minutes, and the target is to try and get as many as possible. But that'll all be developed in the ensuing investigation.
One thing that we did learn from investigators is that the shooter apparently live streamed the shooting for others to see. Does that essentially add maybe more evidence that could help investigators in any way as they look into this a little bit further?
Well, I think the amount of live stream that was out was pretty short, but they did go to, I believe it was put up on Kick, and Kick is cooperating with the investigation. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that was actually put up. I don't believe all of it was released. So Kick will have some of it, and the investigators will be able to look at that and see if there was any final comments that the person was going to make regarding motive or what he was trying to do. But they'll also look at the behavior of him from the moment he walks into the building to the moment of the shooting.
Technology-wise, how is it that, and this is something that will be investigated, but I want to get your take as an expert here. How is it that a gun was able to get into this school and that it wasn't found by officials and that this was able to happen?
So the problem with technology is that a lot of times people believe that it's the silver bullet, that's the thing that's going to solve our issues. And when it comes to evolving technologies, you need to be able to put a layered approach in. And the issue here was that there were no magnetometers getting into the school, and that was a school district decision. But they did deploy technology that would identify a weapon if it was shown and would trigger the alert. My issue with all of that, while all of that technology is really useful and great technology and works as designed, the real problem here is it picks it up from the moment when the gun is produced and the shooting starts. And that seems to be the issue. We've spent a lot of time looking at, what happens during a shooting and how do you save yourself, the whole run, hide, fight. But you never get back down to the real issue of how do we prevent this from going forward. And technology is not always the solution here.
When we look at those social media posts, we don't necessarily have a lot of details. We know that we've heard from several different groups, they're circulating online, but officials haven't necessarily connected them officially to that suspect just yet. My question is, what do you make of those posts there?
So, part of the problem is that the universe, and it's literally a universe in size and scope, with these social media postings that go out. So it's incredibly difficult to look at and try and identify those individual posts that are now clearly red flags. One of the issues that we have when we do the assessments is that we're looking at content and context. And right now, while there's technology out there that can pick out the context, you can't get the the content, you can't get the context of what that person really meant. How many times have you gotten a text message and you're like not sure, a friend sends it to you and you're not sure if it was a joke or what the meaning was. So when you put it into a scale of something this large, it becomes a major problem for us.
What about the idea of a manifesto? That's also something that's been discussed a lot. We're hearing a lot about that when we talk about incidents like school shootings and even, mass attacks like over in New Orleans. We've heard a lot about these manifestos. Is that something new, or are we just maybe hearing about it more?
I think we're hearing about it a little bit more now. We're starting to realize, I think there's a whole lot of copycat that goes with it. Somebody's going to conduct the attack and they think that the manifesto is a good idea. But the critical issues here with all of that is that, as it's been reported, this individual started writing back, September, October, November timeframe, and now we're in January. So his belief, his writings, his feelings were all things that were potential indicators to the violence. We've developed what we call our TAG program, a threat assessment group program, where we actually go in and try and pick up what are those indicators to potential violence, what are those things that change that personality. And I think as we look at the manifesto and from the dates and times that it started to write to the time through, what we're going to learn is that there were changes in his personality that friends or family members should have picked up on. And that's something that, even in his writing, in the little bit that has been released, the writing that he believed his friends, he was starting to pull away from his friends, and he didn't believe in them and how they believed in the things that they believed in. And that's something that we really need a better education to the parents and the children to understand what are those particular signals.
My last question for you here. One thing that we did see in those posts, there is a possible connection, according to investigators. They say that it may have been possible that he was in touch with one of the other school shooters from last month. This was over in December in Madison, Wisconsin. What do you make of that? Because that's something that investigators have hinted they are looking into because of a connection in social media accounts between the two.
Yeah, I think the platforms that they go on, the chat rooms that they're getting into, the communications that they're having with the group, just like you have a friends group on Facebook, these are people who become like-minded and have a tendency of being able to sort of, hate to use the word radicalize, but radicalize each other and encourage each other into these behaviors. So it's something that'll get it, that they'll take a harder look at.
All right, Sal, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. Anything else you want to add about really any of this before I let you go?
I think I just want to reiterate the point that I think it's critical that, well, all of the technologies and everything that we're deploying all starts at the point of inception from the shooting. And I think having something along the lines like our TAG program, the Threat Assessment Group program, where you can find those indicators of the behaviors before we get to the shooting. And those are the critical times that we need to pay attention to.
All right, Sal, thank you again for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Talk soon.